Welcome, my dear listeners. My name is Stephen Kamore. If new here, remember to subscribe to continue enjoying more life transforming videos. It is a general observation that we all tend to monitor our bodies and our physical health far more than we do to our emotional health. We know that if a small physical injury, like a cut, become more painful over time, it is a sign of a more serious infection. However, failing to get a promotion at work, experiencing a broken courtship or marriage, loss of a loved one, failed business or emotional abuse can equally be emotionally painful. But it takes weeks and months before we discover we might be getting to depression. We tend to react to physical pain much more proactively than we do to emotional pain. Yet, my listener, emotional pain often impacts our lives far more than physical pain does. There are many people in our society today living with emotional wounds. Emotional wounds are real, painful, but difficult to identify. People may look smart from outside when you see them walking along the street, but internally suffering pain of hidden emotional wounds. My listener, have you ever had an experience that left you emotionally hurt or wounded? Does the memory of that experience hurt you today? If it does, you may be emotionally wounded. Emotional wounds can be caused by various life experiences like heartbreaks in relationships, emotional abuse, betrayal, rejection, failed project, or experiencing critical incidents like loss of loved one, accidents, terror attacks, or loss of treasured opportunities and properties. My listener, most wounding experiences tend to happen unexpectedly, meaning that people have little or no time to raise their emotional defenses. We are living in a world or a society where mental and emotional problems have become epidemics. What am I saying? We are all vulnerable. Children, youth, parents, professionals, Christians, non-Christians, men, women, leaders, clergies, rich, or even poor. All are vulnerable to emotional wounds, and none is exceptional. In this presentation, my listener, I want to share with you 7 differences between physical and emotional wounds that would give you an insight to change your attitude toward people who are emotionally wounded. It is a general observation that many people in our contemporary society, in our families, in the church, in our neighborhood, are ignored when they are suffering from emotional wounds. Point number 1. Physical wounds are visible, while emotional wounds are invisible. Physical wounds, my listeners, are easy to spot because they usually leave physical evidence of an injury. We can see a broken bone, a scar, or somebody walking on a wheelchair. People tend to respond to these physical signs with sympathy and empathy, and often with an accommodative attitude. However, there are no visible signs of emotional wounds, and therefore, people with emotional wounds are often isolated in the society. Sometimes their emotional wounds results in their own isolation. In other words, they tend to feel that they are not worthy, and therefore they isolate themselves. Other times, those with emotional wounds are regarded as moody or difficult, and therefore isolated by family members, by church members, by their neighbors, by friends, by their workmates, or even sometimes by peers. My listener, emotional wounds are much harder to spot because they have been hidden or denied for so long, but they are far more devastating in the end if not properly addressed. May I tell you something? The scars you can't see are the hardest to heal. Sometimes emotional wound is completely inward, and sometimes can only be seen in people with depression, anger, stress, or even anxiety. These things are not visible. You can't see them with the physical eye. Note that just because you can't see the emotional wound doesn't mean a person is not hurting. Point number 2. Physical wound tend to attract compassion as people underestimate those with emotional wound. Studies have found that we consistently underestimate others' emotional pain, but not their physical pain. It is interesting. When we see somebody with a physical wound, we tend to express concern and sympathy, but by typically asking if they are okay or if they need help. In other words, we show compassion to such people. However, when we see, for example, let me give an example. When we see a stranger hit by a car, we wince, gasp, or even scream and run to see if they are okay. I hope all of us have seen this kind of experiences in one way, in one time or another. But when we see a stranger being bullied or taunted, we are unlikely to do any of these things. Many other times I've seen people being terrorized along the streets, being bullied, but people don't even care. They go on with their business as if nothing is happening. So the person with emotional wounds may be described as difficult. This is because of the internal struggles and pain they are undergoing, which is not visible. So people with emotional wounds may require empathetic friends or family members who can listen to them share their hurting, toxic emotions. We must therefore be mindful of every person experiencing emotional wounds, just as we do to all who experience physical wounds. Point number 3. Physical wounds have healing time, but emotional wounds can be lifelong and progressive. A physical wound, my listener, often has a time frame. Probably it can take about 3 weeks or a month to heal. But when people are experiencing emotional wounds, there is no time frame for recovery. While counseling and therapy can be beneficial to such people, there is no number of sessions scientifically proven to resolve the emotional wounds. Therefore, in contrast to physical wounds, people with emotional wounds are more difficult to heal because emotional wounds are complex and can be layered with multiple traumas. Point number 4. It is easy to understand physical wounds than emotional wounds. Physical wounds, my listener, have a start date, maybe when they are diagnosed. It is easier to identify the onset of a physical symptom because we respond to changes in our physical capabilities and pain. These are also easier to describe to friends, to family members, and other providers without fear of judgment. Emotional wounds, my dear listener, may involve an actual experience, such as a traumatic event. Many times, however, there is no identifiable cause, and the first symptoms tend to be written off because they are not physical. Symptoms like decreased sleep, decreased energy, and fatigue may lead to internal and external blame, which can exacerbate the symptoms. The thoughts of sharing these symptoms often arouse feelings of shame and inadequacy. Point number 5. Physical wounds have healing time, but emotional wounds can be lifelong and progressive. While some physical injuries may cause a scar, the impact of those injuries often have a recovery date. People with physical scars tend to hide them with clothes and a mask. So most of the time, you may not even see them. When people wear their clothes smartly, they cover all the scars. And therefore, unless they are naked, you may never realize they have scars. The long-term impact of emotional wounds can be lifelong and progressive. The scars are not visible, but unlike physical scars, they often grow rather than fade over time. I hope you note that one clearly, that emotional scars, rather than fade over time, they grow. So emotional wounds can lead to other problems such as physical ailments, anxiety, low self-esteem, poor concentration, change of sleep pattern, and other long-term mental issues. Those with mental wounds tend to hide them with a smile and laughter. Point number 6. Memories trigger emotional pain, but not physical pain. My listener, recalling the time you broke your leg will not make your leg hurt, but recalling the time you felt rejected by your friends, by your parents, by your siblings, by your workmates will cause you a substantial emotional pain. Our ability to evoke emotional pain by merely remembering distressing events is profound and stands in stark contrast to our total inability to re-experience physical pain. Point number 7 and the last one. That emotional pain echoes in ways physical pain does not. Physical pain, my listener, usually leaves few echoes unless the circumstance of the injury was emotionally traumatic, while emotional pain leaves numerous reminders, associations, and triggers that reactivate our pain when we encounter them. Many times, physical and emotional wounds run hand in hand. In summary, physical wounds are visible while emotional wounds are invisible. We tend to become compassionate to people with physical wounds and underestimate those with emotional wounds. A physical wound often has a time frame for recovery attached, while emotional wounds, there is no time frame for recovery. It is easier to understand physical wounds than emotional wounds. Physical wounds have healing time, but emotional wounds can be lifelong and progressive. Memories trigger emotional pain, but not physical pain. And lastly, emotional pain echoes in ways physical pain does not. I'm sure now you have gained some good insight on the differences between physical and emotional wounds. It is my hope that your attitudes toward people suffering emotional wound is now better. Emotional wound is real. Never pretend as though it does not exist. The longer you will ignore your emotional pain, the longer it will endure. My listener, I would like to share with you another inspiring and informative video. But before I do it, kindly remember to subscribe to my YouTube account to ensure you don't miss other inspiring and life-enriching videos. My listener, I would appreciate if you share this video with a friend. Turn to your phone or to your computer now. Search for another video in my YouTube to get empowered and inspired. Thank you.